All right, we've got quite a few people logging on. I think we can probably get started. I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Gentili. I do marketing communications at Resonant Energy. And we're here to talk to you about how synagogues and Jewish nonprofits can go solar and why right now is really the best time to be thinking about it if you've been considering how you can make clean energy a part of your organization. I will pass to my friend Jim at Mass IPL for a little
Great.
introduction.
Oh, great. Thanks, Rachel. It's always a pleasure joining my friends and partners at Resonant Energy to talk about solar. Um, it's been a crazy couple of years of ups and downs and a lot of downs going on over the last few months, but anxious to hear your point of view on it because you guys always have, you know, the insight on exactly what's going on. And my take so far is not as bad as I thought it was, or it's not as bad as it could be yet, but still a couple of shoes yet to drop. Um, but yeah, we were chatting right before this. Even if all this stuff goes away, uh, with the new SMART program coming on board, maybe it won't be as good as when we have the full IRA direct pay available, but it's still going to make a ton of sense for most houses of worship to go solar and join the roughly 200 or so across the state that have gone solar in the past bunch of years. And at least the numbers I have, there's about 33, 34 megawatts of solar installed on houses of worship around the state. So making a really good contribution to caring for creation here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. I will pass to my colleague Sana, who's going to lead our webinar today.
Great. Thanks, Rachel and Jim, for kicking us off. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're excited to focus today's webinar, as Rachel said, on solar for Jewish nonprofits and promote the Jewish Solar Challenge, which is an exciting opportunity to get some funding. Very quickly before I introduce myself, this webinar is for all organizations, regardless of where you might be in the process of installing solar. Maybe you haven't explored solar at all before, or maybe you've started the process of installing solar and are in need of additional financing and resources. We'll have something here for you. And here's just the quick agenda for today. I will introduce myself and Resonant for anyone who is new to us. Then I'll discuss the benefits of solar, what the solar policy landscape looks like today, since that's been changing a lot, as Jim said, and what specific grant opportunities are available to your organization right now. So my name's Sana. I will be leading the webinar today. I'm the Community Partnerships Manager at Resonant Energy. I started about a year ago. I have a background in urban planning and stakeholder engagement, specifically around renewable energy. And I manage our partnerships and programs that help expand access to and educate on the benefits of solar. And Rachel will be helping answer questions throughout the presentation in the chat. So feel free to drop those whenever they pop up. So, who is Resonant Energy? Resonant was founded in 2016 with a mission to expand access to clean energy in underinvested communities. And today we primarily do that by helping nonprofit organizations like houses of worship, schools, multifamily housing developments go solar and take advantage of the available financing and funding opportunities that can otherwise feel difficult to pursue. We are essentially a general contractor for solar, so we manage the entire construction process in addition to financing and incentives. We also have a strong policy and advocacy arm that allows us to do grant-funded work in alignment with our mission. We are B Corp certified and employee owned, and our office is in downtown Boston, but we work all over Massachusetts and have done a few projects in New York as well. We've installed over 300 solar projects to date. Here are just a handful of houses of worship we've worked on, including synagogues and churches. A few highlights. The parking canopy at Temple Amuna is a community solar project. This means that 50% is going to the synagogue, and the other 50% is going to low-income residents in the area. If you have a large parking lot like this is a great option. Temple Beth David participated in an interfaith solar campaign that we led a few years ago that helped several houses of worship solarize together. And Calvary United Methodist Church is a more recent project that just got turned on last year. If you're interested in an opportunity to see a system in person and hear directly from a synagogue that installed solar, Temple Amuna is hosting an in-person event in the fall. And I think someone from Temple Amuna is here, so perhaps they can share details in the chat if those are finalized, but otherwise we'll share details as well in our communications. So keep an eye out for that. So if this is your first time considering solar, you may be wondering why go solar at all. So I'll talk a little bit about the benefits. For one, the cost of electricity is on the rise, and this is particularly the case in Massachusetts, as I'm sure many of you felt this winter. You can see in this graph from the US Energy Information Administration that there is not only a clear upward trend in average electricity prices, but that Massachusetts, which is the brown line, Massachusetts electricity prices are significantly higher than the national average in blue. And this is in large part because the state continues to rely on oil and gas, which are imported and therefore subject to inflation and unpredictable price spikes spurred by tariffs and global events. You can see there was a large spike after the war in Ukraine broke out, for example. And as it currently stands, Massachusetts does have some of the most expensive electricity in the country. Boston is ranked one of the top 5 cities for energy burden, which means Boston area residents are spending high percentages of their income on electricity costs. And under the new administration, the cost of electricity is expected to rise more quickly than before. Our governor predicts that the tariffs that have now been put into effect by the Trump admin will increase electricity costs by as much as $200 million a year. On the other hand, Massachusetts stands out in another way. We have some of the best solar incentives in the state, which likely explains why solar deployment is relatively high. Not to mention, solar is a reliable way to protect against the increasing costs and price spikes highlighted in the last slide. The leading state program here in Massachusetts is called SMART, which has been named one of the best in the country. SMART offers cash payments to anyone who owns a solar system on a per kilowatt hour basis for 15 to 20 years. And a new iteration of SMART with higher cash payments called Smart 3 is rolling out this year, so now is a great time to get at the top of the queue. I'll share a little bit more on this later. And in addition to SMART, there are other grant programs which can help cover the cost of installation. LISP, for example, is a state-run grant for nonprofits. We are awaiting the application release, but I'll talk about SUN, Solar Upgrading Nonprofits, and the Jewish Solar Challenge in more detail as applications for both of those are open now. So here's what we tend to see when nonprofits go solar. Installing solar means you are no longer reliant on oil, gas, or other imported fuels. Instead, you are energy self-sufficient, producing clean energy on site that is insulated from inflation, from tariffs, and price spikes spurred by global events. This increased resiliency tends to save organizations 40 to 100% of their electricity bill and allows them to be more financially focused on their missions. One concrete example of this is a past client of ours, a synagogue in Auburndale. They went solar with us in 2018, and since then, electricity costs have actually risen twice as quickly as they did in the 15 years prior to their installation. And so as a result, the organization will save 172,000 more dollars on their operating costs than we predicted when we first did their solar feasibility analysis. And so had they not installed solar, they would have paid at least $800,000 in electricity costs over the system's lifetime. So now that you have an idea of what impact going solar can have for your organization, I'll talk about the current policy landscape and what incentives look like right now. Many of you are probably familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the IRA, which was passed in 2022 under the Biden admin. It was the largest climate bill ever passed by Congress and offers some of the strongest incentives for solar to date. And it specifically made the transition to solar a lot easier for nonprofits. Some highlights of the IRA: it increased the tax basis. The base tax credit, which you can see here in yellow, that was set to sunset from 22% to 30% and signed it into law for the next 10 years. And it allows additional tax credits above that 30% to be received for projects that meet specific criteria. That includes these pink and purple boxes. Projects in or serving low-income communities can receive a 10 or 20% adder. Those in energy communities, which are areas with formerly robust fossil fuel industries that are now experiencing economic decline, can receive an additional 10%. And projects that are built with domestically sourced equipment can receive yet another 10%. So through this policy, it's possible to receive up to a 70% tax credit on a given solar project, which was obviously huge. We tend to see more around the 40 to 50% range. But the IRA also instated direct pay, which allows tax-exempt organizations like yours, nonprofit organizations, to claim this tax credit as a check reimbursement from the IRS. So this means that in year one of the solar system's operation, you'll receive a reimbursement on the total cost of the system of at least 30%, potentially more if you receive these adders. Trump's recent federal tax bill has unfortunately undone much of the IRA and set the tax credits to phase out earlier than initially planned. But despite this, there is still time for you to take advantage of this significant incentive. The law that was passed states that you can receive the tax credit if you install and turn on your system by December 31st, 2027. And until then, the benefits are largely the same, meaning you can receive adders and apply for direct pay. If you think you'll need more time to finish a solar project and turn on your system, you can meet the safe harbor deadline of July 4th, 2026, and then have 4 years to install and turn on your project, which brings us to 2030. Safe harboring, for those who aren't familiar, means expensing 5 to 10% of the project. So you'd have to do that before July 4th of 2026. The good news is that while tax credits are phasing out, SMART, which I talked about, the state program is ramping up. Funding for the original SMART program had pretty much run out. But starting this year, you can enroll in SMART 3.0, which will have significantly higher incentives across a number of projects, including community solar projects and parking canopies. On the next slide, I just have an example of what the new SMART looks like in comparison to the old SMART. You can see here this nonprofit organization in New Bedford will receive a $162,000 upside as a result of the new SMART program, which nearly makes up for the tax credit in the chance that they aren't able to receive it. But ideally, you're able to meet these deadlines and take advantage of both incentives. So that was a lot of information. So I'm just going to recap the deadlines. If you put 5 to 10% of project costs towards beginning solar construction, also known as safe harboring, by July 4th, 2026, you will have 4 years to complete the project, bringing us to July 2030, as I mentioned. Otherwise, if you do not safe harbor, you will have until December 31st, 2027 to install and turn your system on. So those are the two key deadlines to keep in mind as you're exploring solar. If you are considering battery storage for your project, you will want to safe harbor ideally by the end of this year as opposed to July 4th, 2026. I've grayed it out because I don't imagine it's too relevant here, but safe harboring by this earlier deadline ensures that you don't need to adhere to foreign entities of concern or FEOC requirements, which restrict where you can source equipment from. These restrictions would make battery sourcing particularly hard. So if you think this might apply for you to you, reach out to us and we can offer some additional guidance on that. But in general, these two deadlines, July 4th, 2026 and December 31st, 2027 are the key deadlines to keep in mind. And in any case, we are here to navigate these changes with you. You don't have to remember all of this. We're prepared to protect your tax credit in whatever way makes the most sense for the project that you're considering. Okay, so lastly, I will take us through the different financing options for solar and the two grant programs I mentioned that are available to you right now, including the Jewish Solar Challenge. So when we put together, just as an overview, a solar proposal for you, we run up to 9 different design and financing arrangements based on your building's total solar capacity and your on-site electricity usage, which we determine through your e-bill. We'll make a recommendation with this information of a pathway that delivers the highest savings and is in closest alignment with your organization's priorities. And these typically tend to be one of these three options, so I will go over them. The first being direct ownership, which is the most straightforward. This means you buy the system outright, you receive all the state and federal incentives that I just discussed, assuming you meet the deadlines for the tax credits, and see the highest long-term savings. But then for organizations unable to make that upfront investment of buying the system outright, we can work with a third-party financer to fund the system on your roof. And you won't be responsible for any of the upfront costs. Instead, you'll enter into an agreement called a power purchase agreement with the financer to purchase some of the electricity produced by the system at a discounted rate. And then over time, you'll still save plenty of money on your electricity bills. And then lastly, if you have the space, you can also choose to install a community solar system, either through the direct ownership or the power purchase agreement route, where under the new policy, I believe it's at least 40% of the output that is then sold to low-income households in your community, and the rest can be used to offset your building's electricity usage. This is a great way to access additional cash incentives and make a larger social impact. And next we have the Jewish Solar Challenge. So now is a great time to do a solar feasibility analysis for many reasons, but especially because of this grant opportunity through the Jewish Solar Challenge. Jewish institutions of all kinds can apply for up to $50,000 in grant funding to cover the cost of solar installation. The deadline for this is coming up pretty quickly, as you'll see, but all you need is a solar proposal, which we can help you with, and to fill out a short application. As long as you can provide us with your latest electricity bill and building's roof age, we can conduct our analysis and put together a solar proposal for you by September 19th so that you have a few days left to fill out and submit the application on September 22nd. We've taken a look at it and it's not too long, so think that that is a feasible turnaround time. And then if you're feeling a little burdened by the time spent exploring solar, gathering all those materials, having internal discussions, and filling out an application for the Jewish Solar Challenge, we have a few stipends left through our grant program with the Providers Council and Mass CEC that we launched earlier this year. The idea is that these stipends compensate for that time. So, in other words, if you enroll in SUN, you will get paid at least $2,500 to apply for the Jewish Solar Challenge. The enrollment form for Sun is very short, so we encourage you to apply if you're going for the Jewish Solar Challenge, and I will share a link to that on the next slide. Okay, so if you're ready to get started, here's a recap of our recommended next steps. To apply for the Jewish Solar Challenge, send us your address, electric bill, and roof age by this Friday, September 12th, so we can do the analysis and get you a proposal in time. Then apply for Sun using the QR code below. It's very short form, as I said, but that way we have your information on file to set the stipend aside for you. We'll send you a proposal by the 19th in time to meet the grant deadline on the 22nd. And then once that's submitted, we'll schedule a meeting with you to review the proposal in some more detail so you understand it fully and can get all your questions answered. And then you'll be set to receive your Sun stipend. And feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions in the meantime. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Um, there's a couple of folks that have their hands raised. Um, if you don't mind just like throwing your in, I don't know if we have it set up to be able to allow you to talk. So if you could just throw any questions that you have in the chat or in the Q&A box, that would be great. And I can also add that, yeah, I looked into the Jewish Solar Challenge application, and it's just a pretty short Google form. So the biggest thing you need is a solar feasibility analysis, which our team can help you with. But we do need your information. Um, oh, and yeah, speaking, got a question about what the funding source is. Um, yeah, the funding source is actually a nonprofit, aptly named the Jewish Solar Challenge. I believe they launched last year. And you can look them up. It's just jewishsolarchallenge either .com or .org, I believe. I can put it in the chat. But they're a philanthropic organization that helps Jewish organizations go forward with solar. So very cool. Um, There's a question about what the cost will be to our organization. Sana, would you be able to speak a little bit to like kind of what the average costs looks like?
Yeah, I guess that really depends on system size, but we can model that for you with the electric bill and an address, and your roof age. That'll be part of our feasibility analysis process is determining exactly how much that would cost and what the payback period would be over the system's 25-year lifetime. And if that feels not feasible, then we can provide pricing for the PPA model, which would be no upfront cost to your organization. It's hard
Great.
to pin down a specific cost because it just really varies.
Yeah, very much depends on the size and the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah,
Um,
I can jump in and say that of the roughly 60 houses of worship that Mass IPL has been involved in, kind of the average, if I did just do a quote unquote average, is between 75 and $100,000. Um, and that's kind of, that would be a system likely to produce maybe 30,000 to 35,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a year. Um, Again, if you have a bigger building, you have more roof space, you can go bigger. But then you can always design it specifically to how much electricity you need as well. So again, a lot of those variables, but if I had to pick a starting number, which often, people, want to just have an initial discussion with the leadership of their organization, say, hey, it's going to be, let's call it 75 to $100,000. How do people feel about that?
exactly. And then, you can also get into the details of how
Yeah.
much of the federal tax credit you're going to get, how much if
Yeah.
you apply for this Jewish Solar Challenge. So yeah, that's a good starting point for
Yeah.
sure. There's a question about roof ages. So what we need to get, generally our advice is to only install solar on a roof that is 10 years old or younger. Any older than that, you run into the issue of you might need a roof replacement before the solar is done with its, feasible life. And so we don't want to have to, you don't want to have to remove the solar system in order to do a roof replacement. So we try to best time is when you have a brand new roof, but anything under 10 years is what we will usually install on. Um, let's see. Can you walk us through how solar energy differs from general electricity in the day-to-day life of an organization? Sana, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So typically the system will be set up directly behind your meter. And so you really won't notice a difference in the day to day. You will, depending on how much your system produces, that'll go towards your electricity bill. And you will receive a bill that reflects the excess basically that you have to purchase from the utility in any given month. Um, so you can expect a reduction in your electricity bill. Sometimes it even goes down to zero if we can size it accordingly. But otherwise, there isn't much else that changes in the day-to-day life of an organization. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Bill, Jim, sorry, specifically for um, synagogues and houses of worship, but that's our general sort of answer.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Is the Jewish Solar Challenge specifically for existing buildings? That's a good question. I don't believe they have set that expectation. But they do require some kind of analysis. We also do a pretty significant amount of work with new construction buildings, particularly more so in the affordable housing sector. So I imagine that they would also be willing to accept that. It certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt to throw in an application. Like I said, it's a pretty short Google form. So we could explore that for sure. Um, is there a limit to the funds? I believe they said they're anticipating 7 to 10 awards this year. Um, so I think that's about right, with a max award of 50K. Um, when you give a proposal, do you estimate the cost reduction so we can compare the cost to the anticipated reduction in our bills? Yeah, we do a full cash flow analysis of what all of the benefits are, what your existing electricity costs are, what we anticipate those electricity costs to be over the next 20 years. As was shown in the example of the synagogue from 2018, we can guess based on it, but electricity prices are rising pretty rapidly. So our guess right now, in all likelihood, might be lower than what your actual costs will be over the next 25 years. But we do a thorough analysis of that as we go through. We've got a couple of questions from some folks who are in New Jersey. Unfortunately, right now, Resonant Energy doesn't do work in New Jersey. I would suggest looking at Energy Sage is a great site for finding local solar providers in your area. Um, like I mentioned in the chat, a lot of this is relevant to other states. All of the federal policies are the same nationwide. And the Jewish Solar Challenge is also a nationwide award. So you could definitely apply to that on your own pretty easily. If you can get oh, sorry, my cat. Sorry about that. You can, yeah, apply to that on your own, and find another provider in your state pretty easily. How have organizations dealt with resistance from roofers about solar negatively impacting or voiding warranty? That's a great question. Generally, we work with roofers. We try, depending on the building, we try to do as little penetrations as possible into the roof to avoid any warranty issues. But we'll work with your roofer or somebody that's certified in your roofing material to make sure that there's no issues with that. Um, Question from someone in New York. Um, yeah, if you want to reach out to us with we like Sana mentioned, we do some work in New York. It's fairly limited, but if you want to reach out to us with your info, we can check in and we could certainly help you apply for the Jewish Solar Challenge if that makes sense. And
And I think there are some questions about Resonant, just us managing the project. So yes, we are also a full service developer. So we will manage the installation process in addition to this sort of early stage process of assessing your options and applying for funding. And then if you do decide to proceed, we will, just you'll continue working with us through the through the project's install, and we can also help with operations and system monitoring once it is installed. Um, and I think someone asked how we are paid, and that is there's no cost for you to complete the application with us or for you to do a solar um, feasibility analysis and receive a proposal from us. We will ultimately take a percentage of the total development cost if you do decide to proceed.
I see there's a comment from Fred that Temple Beth David is really happy with their first resident install and they're interested in adding a phase two. Yeah, you could definitely submit that to the Jewish Solar Challenge. I bet they would love to hear that, that you were so happy with your first project that you're interested in doing more. So yeah, definitely send us an email for sure. Another question, yeah, again, we don't do work in New Jersey, so I don't have any roofer recommendations for you. Um, but there's it shouldn't be hard to find someone, I imagine. There's a lot of roofers that work with solar as well. Question, you just need one current bill. Yeah, that's correct. Generally, the utility provides on each bill your electricity usage for the last 12 months. So we use that to estimate your yearly usage, and we use that to determine how big of a system your electricity usage can support. Was experience putting solar up in places other than the roof. Yeah, like Alan mentioned, we did the project at Temple Amuna as a rooftop canopy project. We've also done a few ground-mounted projects that are just in, a field anywhere that you have extra space that is big enough to install some systems. We can look into that as well. Generally, the roof is the best place because it's unused space. It's away from everybody very easily to produce solar, produce energy and not be a nuisance. But we can also look at other options as well. I believe that might be it for questions. Um, Telephone help, I can put um, oh, but this is for somebody in New Jersey. I can We have a phone number. I will be straightforward. It does not get answered very regularly. Generally, we call back voicemails. And our team is about to be out for a few days on a team-wide retreat. So it might not be the most useful. I can put it in the chat. Feel free to leave us a message. But like I said, we don't do work in New Jersey, so we can't really offer a whole lot of assistance there. Um, as I mentioned, Energy Sage, which I will also put in the chat, is a great search engine that can be used to find solar providers in your area and compare reviews and things like that. So that's a very useful tool for you as you explore. We talked about the PPA option. Yeah, so power purchase agreement is an option where a third-party financer owns the system, and you as an organization just host the system on your roof or on your parking lot, and you have the opportunity to purchase the electricity at a discount. So it's no upfront cost, and instead you're just paying monthly for discounted electricity compared to what you would pay the utility. Yeah, I will also put a link to the Jewish Solar Challenge, so you can read more about that on their website. Um, yeah, as we mentioned, it's due on September 22nd, so fairly soon. The biggest thing you need to do that is a some kind of analysis, either through Resonant or through another solar provider that works in your state. All right. If there are no further questions. Yeah, so Jewish Solar Challenge is based in the West Coast. I don't know how many applicants they've already had, but we met them at last year's, or I guess earlier this year's Jewish Climate Action Network Massachusetts conference. So they have a presence on the East Coast, and they are looking for as many applicants as they can get. Oh, more questions about that. Yes, I will include in the follow-up email all of these links. Um, Questions about the matching period for Jewish Solar Challenge. Um, that is a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head. You could definitely read their website. They had a pretty extensive FAQ section. I believe you could probably match with donations that have already been made. Is the grant all or nothing? If we raise 40K, can we match? Yeah, great questions that I don't know. I don't work for Jewish Solar Challenge. I'm just helping folks apply. So feel free to look on their website, and they've been very responsive to us when we've had questions. So feel free to send them an email with more detailed questions. Is the Jewish Solar Challenge separate from your assistance? Yes, that's right. So we are a developer. We help organizations install solar regardless of whether they get grant money or not. Um, and we were invited to share about this grant opportunity. And so we using this as an opportunity to talk to folks, help them get started, particularly with all of these deadlines coming up for the federal incentives. This is really the best time if you are a Jewish organization and you're thinking about solar anytime in the next 4 or 5 years. This is the time to do it before you lose access to all of those incentives. So we have no affiliation with the Jewish Solar Challenge other than we really appreciate the good work that they're doing, and we're hoping to help some folks apply to them. Who can help advise about government incentives in New Jersey and federal new SMART. Yeah, so SMART is a Massachusetts-based incentive, so you're not going to have that in New Jersey. But the federal safe harbor is something you'll want to look at. And I'm sure New Jersey has their own state incentive program. So like I said, try Energy Sage. Look for a provider that works in New Jersey that will probably have some kind of expertise on who you should talk to, what their deadlines are, and hopefully they can help you out. Yep. All right.
Yeah, the
Oh, go ahead.
there was one question about the Sun program for out of state. folks, but the Sun program is also specifically for Massachusetts organizations. Um, so anything, since that's a resident managed program and we work in Massachusetts, but the Jewish Solar Challenge, as Rachel has said, is available to organizations across the country.
Great. I believe that is all of the questions we have right now. If you have further questions, feel free to send them to info@resonant.energy, or you can send them directly to sana@resonant.energy. If you're interested in pursuing the Jewish Solar Challenge, we'd recommend sending us your info this week so that we can get a proposal together for you next week and you can be ready to apply the following Monday. Um, yeah, if there are any further questions, feel free to reach out, and we will be following up with all of the links and all of the recording of the webinar as well as a copy of the slides. In the next couple hours, I'll get that sent out. So thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for all your great questions.
Thank you.